Aeon.
This is Satya, and you're listening to
Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. Our podcast was created with the sole intention to release toxic shame, illuminate our shadow nature, and expose the mysterious entities that feed off our most precious life force, our sexual energy. To learn more about our life-enhancing courses and transformational retreats, visit knowtheself.com. Let's dive in.
I didn't have safe or stable love in my house growing up. I didn't even have safety for my emotions. And I was in a very tortured dynamic with my mom, with a whole kind of series of people who were like short-term. It was like a lot of short-term nannies, and I don't even want to get into that. There's 2 times in my life that I know a woman has fallen in love with me, and both times were really scary. But with you, it was many years later from the first one. And, we met under super different circumstances, because with that first one, my energy body was stable. I hadn't, been in this kind of exchange. I hadn't been in a tantric world. So I was in a worse state when I met you, but I was older, and I was somewhat older, and I was older and wiser. And I realized that, that moment where you're like, no, this is just what I want to do. And I knew you weren't asking me for anything. You weren't asking me to be in the background and and support. You weren't asking anything. You were just like, this is what I'm going to go do. And I was like, well, Jesus, my child is coming into the world. And
and when I found out I was pregnant, and we had just broken up like that same day or the day before, and I was super angry at you, and I had just like, I'm done. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm having this child. And I was like, doesn't matter. I know it's good genes, and I'm going to keep this child. This child's my child. And the second I felt the child, my energy field doubled. Like my strength doubled when I was pregnant. It was an ecstatic feeling.
Mm-hmm. When your energy field doubled, I think that's right around when I started going on a bigger ride. Like I was elated, and then I was crashing. Like we were connected.
Yeah, so you went like manic for me.
I was actually at that point became like very much more unstable. Not just like struggling to like, where are my energy boundaries? It was like I was up and down. And I think, we didn't talk about that at the time. You never told me that until like a couple of weeks ago about your energy field doubling. But that's really interesting.
It's how I survived what I was dished out at that moment. Because I can go on and on about the amount of stacked trauma I had on the day I found out I was pregnant. Like it's so much, like with the book publisher, with the guy before you who had got me pregnant from rape, right? And who showed up on my live event. And I remember my whole system being like, I'm going to explode. Like, I can't take any more trauma. And yet, boom, you're pregnant. And I was just like, oh my God. And the whole trauma from the abortion, which was only like, I think 7 months before that or something. Yeah, it was almost a year later. Exactly.
It was more than a year. It was more than a year later. It was like 15 or 16 months later.
Then I was like, okay, I'm having this child, doesn't matter. Adam's out of my life. I'm going to keep this kid. He'll probably come back at some point when he gets his shit together. I mean, this was the thoughts in my head. Like, I was just like done. And I was like, of course, if you want to be a part of the kid's life, but I couldn't have you around me while I was pregnant, because I felt more retreating into the woods. Like I never wanted to leave the woods. And that was my happy place and safe place. And then I was like, well, I better tell my mom she's going to be a grandma. And it was her 80th birthday. And I was like, wow, I wonder if my mom's going to die before this child's born. I mean, I was having all these weird thoughts, because one of the reasons I never wanted to have a kid was because my mom was such an abusive mother. I always said if I ever had a kid, I probably would never even let my mom know the child. But because my mom had all these strokes, she seemed like she was going to die any day. And I was really trying to make amends with her and like have a relationship with her that prior year I had been in her life. It was her birthday, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to her and celebrate her birthday and tell her she's going to be a grandma. And before I could speak it to her, like within the first few hours of being in her presence, I started miscarrying. And like she found out I was pregnant while I was miscarrying, the baby screaming, blacking out in the eyes in excruciating pain. And that in itself, with my mom and my, like, it was like the world wouldn't allow me to have any joy. And my mom said, while I'm in the miscarriage, you're pregnant with who? Adam? Yes, Adam. Oh my God. Well, it was going to be retarded anyway. And I was just like, I can't fucking take this cruel world. You know, that was like, I was just survivor. I'm going to survive this. And then it was like, because I was in the miscarriage, you know, my brother, his girlfriend came, you came, we had a healing and a reconnection in the loss of the child. Like you were there for me, you were holding me. Like the whole next day I was grieving and my mom's like, why are you crying? You know, get over it already. Like it was going to be retarded. You're too old, blah, blah, blah. And for sure it was going to be stupid.
I mean, I just want to say fuck what your mom said. I mean, please don't, I hope you never even hear those words back in your head even one more time the rest of your life, and it just fills in with some other happy story, because that's so fucked up. And I know what it's like when you have to when family members and parents say really shitty things to you, and it's just fucked up, and it's not true, and it's unfair.
Well, there's a truth to it, because I wouldn't have miscarried unless there was a chromosomal there was a problem with the fetus, right?
You think that's why
Yeah.
Why so many reasons you can miscarry? There's no reason to know that it's a chromosomal aberration. Do you feel on some level that you failed in having a miscarriage? Do you
I felt
feel
cursed?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. And that's a strong conclusion to draw, because first of all, miscarriages are not uncommon. I had no idea until after we miscarried and I began talking to people how many people I know have miscarried. You were 43. We were in an extremely emotionally volatile time. We both have amazing genes, but we were up against all of that. So like, I was beating myself up as well afterwards, because
I was angry at you because I felt that you cursed me, that you didn't want me to have the child and you didn't want me to take it away from you. And I was shocked. I was very shocked by your reaction to my pregnancy, completely shocked. I had to get so self-absorbed in order to survive at that moment that I could no longer think of you. Like I was in such survival mode. Like I'd lost everything, and then I had launched the book, but like I still didn't have anything. I hadn't rebuilt my life. Like I was in rebuild mode. Like I didn't feel like I had backup from anywhere. Like it was angels and strangers that had like put money in a GoFundMe account that I was living off of. And I had to produce income immediately. And I was just like, whoa, I got to launch the book, launch the school. My nervous system isn't ready for this, but I have to do it. And the morning I found out I was pregnant, I was launching that afternoon. And to like, I don't know, 40 people online. And then the guy who raped me was on the call. And I was just like, I mean, the levels of trauma that was moving through my body, I was literally like, what is going on? Why can't I just be happy? And then knowing the baby, that's when the baby was like, I did the meditation that I do and that I teach, and boom, I doubled in size. Like it was extraordinary. And so even though everything was super scary and looked really terrifying, and I had a big messes to clean up, I felt so blessed by this child. This child's love was extraordinary. And I was like, oh, okay, Adam, you don't want this love. Stay away from me. You'll come back eventually. Like, I just felt like you needed to go on a different journey. And then ironically, the death of Ari brought us back together to a healed place. We healed. You were there for me. You helped me move from the woods up to Oregon. And then ironically, this was where you handed me off to my next relation in the hot springs. You were like, you see that guy? And I was like, I'm here with you, Adam. I'm not looking at any other guy. What guy? You're like, that guy, he's your warrior for God. Yes, you did.
I didn't say he's your warrior for God. I said he's like this guy was standing there like a statuesque 6'2" blonde guy who's just like this kind of guy was like a chest, but each pec is like a foot broad. And I was like, this guy, and he just, his whole field, his aura was so bright. I was like, this guy is like a warrior of God. I didn't say he was your warrior of God.
Yes, you did. You did.
No, I didn't.
And you wouldn't.
All right.
Okay. You
Agree to
just
disagree.
Warrior for God. You wanted me to see him. I couldn't see him. I was only with you. Like, I was feeling like this is our last night. You helped me move. You moved me up there. You've got me settled in. We were having this beautiful romance and healing of the loss through the pain of losing Ari. And it was like, are we together or not? Can we do long distance? I mean, we were then gonna live like, I don't know, what is it?
8 hours away.
8 hours away or something. I'm like, we could barely do 5 hours. 8 hours is gonna be really
3 hours was good. I was driving up to Mendocino, but 8 hours where we were was gonna, if not being able to come up and see it, was gonna be really challenging.
And I was like, okay, we're breaking up. So you got me settled in. You stayed with me for a few days. We saw the warrior for God, who you pointed out.
Warrior of light.
We had our thing. You left. We said goodbye. It was a peaceful breakup at that moment. Like, we peacefully parted. And I think 2 days after you left, I met the warrior for God on my own. And yeah. And then I was with him for 2 years, and that was a whole set of synchronicities.
2 years, yeah, okay, all right.
The point is that only when I got with Sky, you got upset, and it was since I saw your love to me.
So what are we talking about here?
Now, I never felt you were in love with me. I felt that you were jealous that I went with a younger man. You were jealous, and somehow then you became obsessed with me. Only now
I was jealous.
I really feel your true love towards me.
Yeah.
I never felt that before.
Well, I was afraid.
It.
Well, I was afraid during our relationship. I told you I hadn't really experienced much of what felt like safe love. And I mean, I certainly didn't in my home life growing up. And that's a whole, there's all kinds of things I could share about that. But then when we were together and you were in love with me, I was keeping my guard up. I was keeping like myself at a distance. If I was being, I didn't know how to open up to what I was feeling. And it's the same reason, you've suggested that I come to Mexico, some number of times over the last like month and a half since we started talking. 40 days ago, we started talking about 39, and you've suggested I come there, and there's a reason I have not jumped on that flight, even though the impetus arises. It's because we need to heal. I want to, if we're gonna have whatever our relationship can be from this time, I want it to be from a healed place. And this would be super hard if we were in person, because it would be a lot for both of our nervous systems. I think it would reactivate both of us. Because this is, now we're having this call and we're getting deeper into the feelings underneath and anger, mistrust. Yeah, in my case, more guardedness, fear. I think you were more in anger and mistrust. And of course, there's always fear there, but I was more actively like in fear, even if I wasn't showing it. I was like actually in that vibration a lot. And yeah, fear of opening up, mistrust. I had come from a world where I felt super used in my sexual energy in the Tantra world. You were not doing that, but that channel was so open. We obviously were really strong in that channel. And so, so thank you. Yeah, it's important for me to hear it, that you didn't feel my love while we were together.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I felt that I was a toy for you. Like, I felt that I was a fascination, and I felt like you were trying to conquer me I felt like I didn't feel cherished the way I need to feel in order to feel safe.
Yeah.
And
I definitely had you in my mind as like a teacher role in a way. And you were also taking on that role. And
I didn't want to be your teacher. So that's why I wrote the book for you, basically. Like,
didn't you tell me you channeled the book?
I did. I channeled it from a place of anger, of feeling alone, that nobody, I needed people to understand how to run their energy. Like, it was weird. I was writing a different book. I was writing a totally different book, and my publisher, I went through multiple edits on a totally different book. And then 2 weeks before the deadline, I scrapped the whole thing because of what I think it was the woman with the fur coat. I scrapped that whole thing I was writing because of some argument we were in, and I just channeled what is now synchronicity. The book.
Well, and we were having a ton of conversations about a lot of the things in the book about synchronicity, because in the years prior to us meeting, like the 4 years prior to us meeting, my life had exploded with synchronicity. I mean, so we were having a lot of conversations.
We were having so many,
we
like
were having
boxes and everything. It was just over the top.
Totally. It was incredible. The whole way we were brought together, the whole way, the fire, seeing you shortly afterwards, the whole thing was like us.
Even now, reconnecting. So we reconnected, not knowing, like not thinking about the date. We reconnected because of my Dalai Lama post. And you were like, hey, did you see this video? And I was like, Adam, like out of the blue, Adam, I need to talk to you about this. You're the only one I feel like is really going to understand what I'm seeing.
I mean, I'm honored that you see me that way. And, before we met, I was spending very actively, it spent like the prior, I want to say like 3 years, like, sorry, how many? No, 4 years, like experiencing synchronicity, thinking about it, reading books on alchemy, shamanism, quantum physics. I was in the lab. I was like in the lab and in the tantra house with and I was like teaching, like I was very engaged in that. And I think you scrapped that book and wrote a different book because there was something going on. There was some magic in us being in that. It was like I feel like there was some alchemy. And
I felt that I felt that you were there in that sense, and like how I wrapped it up. Like now I'm reflecting that maybe you're much more than all of that, obviously. But in that moment, I had wrapped it up that you were like the person who showed up with all that synchronicity to help me share my magic with the world and formulate it. And it was through my frustration and anger and like survival skills that I was able to distill certain lessons and trainings and like just channel what needed to come through. And a lot of it was due to what we were experiencing. It was like, oh, okay, like the through line is synchronicity. The fox is pointing me to synchronicity. The fox is the medicine of synchronicity. And coming back to like how we reconnected. So again, it was, I'm talking about the misuse of power on the planet. This is where we connected most deeply, was around people misusing Kundalini, misusing their powers, you feeling like you were being misused in that tantric sex cult that you were involved in, me and my previous relationship.
And I was guilty of misusing inside of there as well. Like both my own energy, not honoring my own energy and not honoring. So I feel like that was where I was trying to.
Well, I felt that you were victimized and activated in Kundalini powers without a teacher that was clear of it was like some dark entity activated your Kundalini and then was feeding off it and getting you to misuse it. Like that was my perspective of you. Like I wanted to help you. I wanted to save you from the dark lords that were working around you and through you. And so many times in our interactions was like, oh my God, I wanted, I don't know, to just like help you survive what you were grappling with.
And I wanted that for you as well. I really felt like thank you for saying that, or just saying that on this call, because I was not in a strong place. I was like in a victimized place.
the synchronicities between us. So I write about many of them in the book. There's many I left out of the book because they're so complex and so layered, like with my family and all these things that happened. And then in us reconnecting, I happen to be editing. I'm writing the 4th edition of the book. So I'm revisiting the stories about you, the whole thing that happened from 7 years ago. Suddenly this Dalai Lama thing pops up. I have a lot to say around, the misuse of sexual energy. So I start posting on it, and then you pop into my feed, and all these years have gone by, and suddenly I was like, oh, Adam, let's talk. And then we got off Instagram, and all that just felt normal. Like, oh, hey, what's up? How are you doing? No big deal. Like, not realizing the gravity of our past. And then the second we were private messaging each other off of social media, my whole body was having a reaction like, ooh, wow. And I could feel your intimidation of connecting. Like you weren't sure if you wanted to connect. There was a hesitancy there. And I was like, whoa, this is intense, talking directly to you in a private channel. Like we went off the public platform, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, there's so much energy here. And we were just texting. We couldn't, both of us acknowledged that we were not ready to speak on the phone. We were like, well, we're going to have to go slow with this. There's so much going on right now. And we start talking, and then you started sharing about Ari and where you've been all these years. Or I think you said something like you'd been waiting a long time to have this conversation, or like to get me alone to talk to me.
I felt like we were unresolved. And so, basically.
Yeah. And in that moment, when I realized that there's unresolved stuff, it just landed with me so immensely, like a ton of bricks just fell from the sky and landed in my lap. And I didn't even realize I had all this weight that I needed to like extrapolate or something. And I was like, oh, I have stuff with you. Like I thought, we lost the kid, we grieved, we moved on, period. Like to me, it was done and complete, because so many things, my life just keeps being so dramatic that I hadn't had the luxury, honestly, of sitting and reflecting. And it felt like a luxury to do that. And that we were both being very vulnerable with each other and sharing where we were at. And then suddenly you mentioned Ari, and I couldn't stop crying. That's when I felt his spirit on my side and holding me. And then I saw this whole parallel reality where you and I were together as a family. And I was like, wow, this is a kind of love that I think I always dreamt about wanting to give, that I never have felt reciprocated. And he was just on my side. Like for 3 days, there was a boy holding me like this. It was so real. Like I was sleeping, waking up to this child. I was sitting here at my table, and he was here. Like he wouldn't leave me. He was showing me how much he loved me. And I saw this like apparition of you, like popping in and out, like the fox that you are, like, hey, what's up? Like family. Literally for 3 days, I was crying. But in the moment when it started, I was texting with you and telling you that I was having this experience. And then I was like, wait a second, what's the date today? And then I remembered it's my mom's birthday. So it's the first birthday of my mother since she died. She loved you. My mom totally loved you. She thought you were great. She was always like all excited to talk to. She talked to you and showed you more love than she's ever showed me. So that was like really bizarre for me, but it was nice for me to see, because I got to see a different mom. Like when I watched you and my mom and my brother interact, I saw a different version of them that I had never seen before. Mm-hmm. And it made me closer to them, even though the conversation was with you. But there was all these synchronicities, like, oh my God, it's my mom's birthday. Oh my God, it's also the day we lost Ari. It was like 7 years.
The day we first messaged was April 16th, and that was the miscarriage date. And then your mom's birthday was
the 7th.
and we were like talking on those 2 days. And I know every year on April 16th. I know when it's April 16th.
I had never thought about it since.
And it was East, and some years it's Easter as well.
Yeah, and that just boggled my mind that you remember that, because for those 3 days that I cried, I realized I never considered myself a mother. I never thought about Ari again. Like, I grieved at the moment, but then I was relieved because I felt like I never wanted to be like a struggling single mom. Like, I struggle enough to support myself, to be responsible for a child, and like, that's like a whole other level. So in a way, the miscarriage, yes, it was sad, but it also felt like, oh, thank God. Like, I just need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
For me, it was so surprising and deeply healing for me to realize what a man goes through, or losing a child in this way. Like, for me, it was like, what do you have to do with, like, oh, for you should be relieved. You didn't want the kid in the first place. That's where I left it.
Yeah.
So it was really surprising for me to see that you still.
Well, but honestly, I want you to know, when I first reacted and was like, okay, not like, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was like overwhelmed and like, I don't want you to keep it, or are you going to keep it? I think it was a conversation, and I wasn't so supportive. I think it's pretty terrifying. Looking back, I realized that, like, I was in a state of disbelief that a woman would love me. The 2 times that a woman has loved me, I'm literally in a state of disbelief, and I've guarded myself up so much through my past against the possibility of really feeling and experiencing that it makes it feel like unreal. Like, I needed to go and have time away, and but like it's like, if you say to somebody, you're gonna okay, I want you to know, tomorrow you're gonna wake up and you're gonna have everything you ever wanted. You're gonna be happy. All the shit that's been difficult, all the challenges, they're not gonna be there anymore, and you're gonna have it all. It sounds like the dream, and it's actually becomes terrifying after enough years of being so far away from what you deeply yearn for. Like, I deeply yearned for a family when I was younger. Like, when I was in my 20s, I wanted 4 kids. And then I'm an adventurous human being. I'm a fox on the move, and I instead of live this life like filled with adventures, and I'm sad about that too, because I'm not so sure. It was like, this thing is happening, and I'm fully already put on armor through my life, all kinds of protective layers, because I'm so exhausted from wanting it for so long and never being able to have it, and really almost like re-traumatizing myself, trying to go back to the same old channels and sources to get it. Like my mother, like my relationship with my mother, who
I have the same birthday as.
Who you have the same birthday as, and you're both Virgo in very different ways. And but yeah, that was a pure synchronicity we discovered while we were dating. And after we had the miscarriage, I talking about synchronicities, I don't know if this is in the book or not, but like, that hummingbird arrived in the cabin and couldn't get out and panicked. We left the cabin and left all the doors and windows open, but it panicked. And I'm not so up on what is the sort of significance of all sorts of different animals, but I know the hummingbird is like, moves between the worlds. It moves, like it's like a symbol of spirit moving through the realms. When that hummingbird
Often symbolizes birth,
right, birth into a different, right, moving through the realms, like however spirit moves into matter and makes a baby. And when we came back in and the bird had panicked itself to death, I was like, oh, this is not a good omen. Like, I was panicky after that for the rest of the pregnancy. And and yeah, it was like weighing on me so much because synchronicity was so present. And synchronicity is not something I have an easy relationship with, because when it started in my life and like became so prevalent, it made it confused. I felt like, where do I have choice here? Like everything is just being arranged for me. I literally just felt like my life was being lined up like dominoes for a couple of years. Like I would think of somebody I hadn't thought about in years, and then I walk out of the restaurant I'm in, turn the corner, haven't seen them in 2 years, and run right into them. And like, of course, that's just something to celebrate. But for me, it it wasn't in that time, because I was so open, and it was so much synchronicity that it was very felt very destabilizing. I just wanted some like you wanted your cabin in the woods. I just wanted synchronicity to like stop. I just wanted like things to like not look. I wanted to not be seeing into some like through the realms and into some grand order. But there was a beautiful synchronicity that happened after the miscarriage and after we parted ways. I was up camping in an area in Northern California called the Willamette Woods. I don't think about it, but then I get home, and then in my backyard, my tiny fenced in backyard. We're not talking about the woods. And I'm the back glass door that faces the backyard. So it's just my like private viewing into the backyard. There is a mother deer and a baby doe, and they stay in the backyard for 3 days. And they are just camped out in the backyard, no more than like 20 feet from my glass door. And I feel the spirit of a woman. So there was a woman who was my nanny and raised me, and I call her my soul mama, whose name is Willa Lucille Williams. And then I realized, oh wow, I live on Willamette Avenue. I was noticing these Willamette woods, and now I can feel, I was having psychic communication with the deer, to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to ask psychic questions. If it's a yes, what are you going to do? And it winks one eye. And I said, okay, so if the answer is yes, you're going to wink one eye. And the deer goes like that, does it again. And I go, what are you going to do if it's a no? And it like wiggles its ears. And I like ask it again and like test it. And so I'm like, so I start asking, this sounds insane, but Lucille's spirit was in that deer. And for like 15 minutes, we were just locked in. I'm outside. I'm on now I'm outside on the porch. We're so close to one another. The mother's not scared about the baby coming near me at all. And Willa Lucille Williams, who is a beautiful being. I went to her funeral many years later, and you know, my relationship with Lucille was traumatic as well, because she lived with us from I was age 7 when she came with us, and then I had my bar mitzvah at 13, and then she left sometime that year or before I turned 14, and that was that. I never saw her or spoke to her for like 15-20 years, and that's when I became like, you know, started putting up lots of defenses and became like a kind of an angry young man. But I found out maybe 15-20 years later, she said, I didn't tell you I was leaving because we were best friends in the world. You were my best friend, she told me, which was my experience. And I didn't want to it would hurt me too much. That's what she told her. I needed that relationship in my life so much. But I didn't end up talking to her again from age 13 until sometime in my 30s. It's not the only time I've had psychic communication with an animal and like full on dialogue. I was so blown away by the specificity of the method that we were having the communication, that's what really stuck with me. I'm glad that you felt compelled to talk to me when you were you know, reacting to the Dalai Lama situation, and I reached out in that moment because I thought that, I mean, honestly, I felt like you were kind of having a strong reaction to it, and it was triggering you, and I thought some of it could be trauma, your trauma, and I wanted to like provide you some relief from it and be of help how I thought I could, or if I could, and I'm glad that you felt for some reason compelled to reconnect so that we could be where we're at now and figure out where that is. I mean, I'm seeing so much about how I was treating myself during those years. I mean, I wasn't nice to you in some ways, and now I'm getting like a mirror back to and reflection back of what I was doing to myself, and it, none of it's any good. But anywho, so I'm glad we're back and having this conversation. I know it's not easy, but it's been a long time in the coming, or maybe just the right time, 7 years after the fact.
And ironically, I found out April 17th, my mom's birthday, the day we lost Ari, is also the day my Chiron went direct. The fact that since I've last spoken to you, have become like an astrology buff. It's been really fascinating to dive into these patterns and cycles and rhythms of our lives from a like macro place, and kind of put them in its place, and also looking at our human design and just like how we are when we're operating in our power, how we are when we're operating in our deficit, or from our stories, or from our wounding.
Yeah,
it's been really healing and illuminating for me to be back in touch with you. Super surprising.
I think we were brought together to like with the potential to heal one another. I felt like during our relationship, I mean, okay, putting aside all the things that made it really hard, there was lots of times when we were together, like immersed, just you and I in your cabin up in Mendocino for a long weekend, or over a whole week. I would just stay through the whole week, and we would just be just the two of us. And so there was so many healings. There was so many times you were crying and I was holding you. I was crying and you were holding me. This was what we were doing with one another and for one another. And so it makes sense that we're continuing in that way now. So I just want to say that. And yeah, your Chiron went direct on April 17th. And you told me that every year around Easter time, like for some number of years, I don't know if it's your entire life or just like the last 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many years, or 10 or 12, that you have really hard shit go down around Easter for you.
I have a few cycles like that. Like in July is also the year that my spiritual teacher and my father died also. So I feel like I was just in this like spinning wheel of karmic trauma drama, like I know that I came in this lifetime to clear my karmic ties and really close out my lineage. And that's one of the reasons also I never thought I would be a mother, because having a child means you're still on the karmic wheel. So maybe it was around like 22, 23. I was just like, oh, I don't want children. This is my last lifetime here. I'm going back home. Like, I'm on a mission. I'm going to accomplish my mission. And I'm going to close out this lineage. I'm going to do the final healing to clear out my family story, or this line that I've come into, and balance.
Well, you know what's interesting? We have so many commonalities that we have not touched on in this podcast, but like one of them is that that's very much something that I've felt as well, is that like my mission in many years was to clear out the wounding, the karmic wounding. But you know what? I wanted to say that I hope we both have, I hope for both our sakes that we've done enough karmic clearing and we just move on to dharmic service, because there's only so much we can keep doing for what came before. I think I see you as having a bigger mission on the earth than just clearing out your karma. And as much as I've done of that in my lineage, not necessarily enough directly with my family. That was sort of a pain point for me, is that I did a bunch of years of karmic clearing, and I kind of felt like, hey, I've done all this work, and I came back and I'm like communing with my grandmother, my great grandmother, and other grandparents, and having like direct transmission through lineage, and like working to like heal, the other members of my family who are in corporeal here on this planet. And then I came back to them, and I think similar to you, I felt not seen, not understood, and kind of hurt that I'm not being appreciated. And it's a burden being as sensitive in these realms as we are, but
But I do want to note another interesting pattern, which was after we lost the baby, I needed to move from my cabin in the woods, and we broke up. I asked my brother if I could live in his empty house, and he said no. And I said, well, then I'm going to have to move really far away to Oregon. He was like, oh yeah, I heard it's cheaper there. They don't have to pay taxes. So then I moved to Oregon. And so at that moment, when I lost Ari and I lost you, I also lost my mom and my brother. My sister at that time, I still hadn't spoken to her, and I didn't see them again. My mom never again. She died in September, and I finally spoke to my brother in November. Well, I saw my mom on video a few days before she died. Yeah. And I saw my brother only last November. And now that my mom's passed, I've reconnected with my brother. We did a lot of healing when I went to see her grave, and I've reconnected with my sister. So most of the last 20 years, I hardly had family, like except that 1 year where we were together most of that year. I never had family. So it's really fascinating. And I really felt my mother aiding, or I could feel her joy in our reconnection at this moment. So it's so mysterious. It's fascinating. It's like awe-inspiring to just see like the perfection of, I don't know, connections and healing and growth and expansion and evolution. And I think we've done some good work, Adam. I'm proud of us both.
I think so too.
And I'm grateful for you. Thank you for being brave to reach out to me again, because I know I wasn't very nice the last time you tried.
It's okay. I forgive you. And I haven't held it against you.
That's good. And you are super lovable.
Thank you.
To learn more about our life-enhancing courses and transformational retreats, visit knowtheself.com.